Philadelphia concert halls, one of the most famous in the world, actually, or in the United States, was the Spectrum in Philadelphia. Um, we've seen a lot of shows there, haven't we?
Yeah, well, the Spectrum started like in '67. I think it was September of '67. First show there was a Quaker City Jazz Festival, and since then, this is what 2009 now. He's probably had a couple thousand shows there at least. And originally, the Spectrum was actually built because the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team came into existence and they needed a new arena in Philadelphia. So they had the Sixers and Flyers play there. And of course they had other, wrestling, boxing, ice capades, circuses, rodeos, you name it. But actually the Spectrum wasn't doing very well the first, like 3 years or so. And then I think in '69, actually, the roof blew off the top of the building, and the Flyers ended up playing in Quebec a couple games, in New York and Toronto, wherever, different sites. And so then, really, the building wasn't doing that well. The Flyers weren't drawing well in the early years. The Sixers never really drew that well, even when they had the great teams. And a lot of the Spectrum success was really the concerts. In the early days, like in the late '60s, you really didn't have that many shows there from the fact that there weren't that many performers who could actually play a building like that. You might have had like maybe Jimi Hendrix, of course, The Doors, Janis Joplin, Iron Butterfly. I think they played there while Grateful Dead opened for them back
Cream.
in '68. Yeah, Cream.
Cream
Blind
was
Faith was an offshoot of Cream. After Cream, you had the Blind Faith supergroup thing. And probably by, like, I'd say '71, that's when the concert scene started changing, when Bill Graham closed the Fillmores, and you had, all these groups playing the big arenas, like the Spectrum. So, Andy, like, you went to a bunch of shows there. What were some of your favorite shows?
Yeah, well, it all started for me with, in, I believe it was January 7th, 1984, with Blue Oyster Cult, Dokken, and Zebra. And Blue Oyster Cult, they just blew that place apart, and they were incredible. Then I saw
Blue Oyster Cult, what, Eric Bloom?
Yeah, Eric Bloom, Buck Dharma,
Alan Lanier, Joe Bouchard. And who was the drummer then? It wasn't...
I believe it was...
Downey?
Yeah, Downey.
Was it Rick Downey?
Rick Downey.
Or Brian Downey?
Actually, I'm friends with those guys. When I go to see them, I always end up hanging out and talking to them. Eric and Buck and all those guys. And
yeah, they were one of the best heavy metal, hard rock bands of all time, definitely. My first experience at the Spectrum was December 11th, '73. Saw Stray Dog open. There were some boogie band from Texas that were on ELP's Manicore label then. They did this one song and they were yelling, "Fasten your seatbelt," and they boogie like for 15 minutes after that. Just a lot of hard rock, cliched stuff. And then they opened up for ELP, and ELP came on, and they were, incredible. It was a phenomenal show. I mean, they put on they sounded incredible. Their showmanship was incredible. The whole deal. They had a quad system and all that good stuff.
That must have been really cool to see Emerson, Lake and Palmer back then. I mean,
yeah, it was the Brain Salad Surgery tour. They had probably their best album, or one of them. Definitely one of their best albums then.
Then I saw, February that year, '84. I saw 38 Special and Huey Lewis in the News, which was a good show. Call it great. But the very next show I saw there, I believe was Yes, 90125 tour. And that show actually wasn't that great.
Yeah, it was a pretty pathetic concert. They had just gotten back together. Who was it? John Anderson, Chris Squire, Alan White, Tony Kaye, and I think it was Trevor Rabin. It wasn't that great of a lineup of Yes, and the 9012 stuff wasn't that good. That wasn't a very good album, and they sounded horrible that night. They just weren't together really, and it was a really bad concert. But how about the next year, Deep Purple?
Well, I was going to mention. What I was going to mention before that was, well, we won't get into the Roger Waters show. That was Eric Clapton was with Roger Waters. It's all right. Eric Clapton did some good souls. Then I saw Judas Priest and no, we saw the Scorpions and Bon Jovi. What was it, in June of that year? And then I saw Judas Priest. I believe it was in July. And then we saw that Dio show with Twisted Sister in August.
That was some of the best shows, like Purple.
But let's get into the better.
Yeah, the best shows.
Well, September '84 was Rush with YNT. That was a good show.
There you go.
Then you had November. I think it was November. Was Sammy Hagar and Crocus.
So what were Rush like then in '84?
They were good in '84, but
Neil Peart did a great solo.
Yeah, and that was the first time I actually saw Rush. Did I say September?
That was their stage.
I believe it was either September or November.
That was their stage.
Oh yeah,
light
really
show.
nice.
It was really good.
It was Grace Under Pressure tour.
Right.
Then of course, like I said, was Sammy Hagar. Then there was, I don't remember, but then let's go into '85. We had Deep Purple. What was it? Jafria opened up for them. This when their reunion tour. What did you think of that show? That show was really great.
Deep Purple were incredible. They were one of the best bands I ever seen there. Probably, I would say ELP, Deep Purple, the Stones, the Who. They were definitely, those four bands definitely, rank. And some of the Yes shows I saw were really great. Genesis I saw once. I didn't think they were that good. I saw them like near the end of their prime period, but they were good, but it wasn't that great of a show. But Deep Purple were definitely one of the 5 best shows I ever seen there. I mean, they were incredible that night, doing all that stuff from Machina and all the early stuff, and it was a really great band. It was John Lord was one of them on keyboards, Roger Glover on bass, Richie Blackmore on lead, Ian Gillan singing, of course Ian Pace. And they're all incredible. It was a great show.
Yeah, then they came back. That was in February. Then they came back in March, and we saw that too. And it was Girl School open for that one. But then there was few other shows down the road there. The Firm, kind of boring show. Firm was that group with Jimmy Page and Paul Rogers and Chris Slade and somebody else. And there was Eric Clapton, snore me to death, it's kind of like a snoozer. Eric Clapton with Graham Parker and the Rumor opened up.